Children who are chronically stressed often reach puberty earlier and have children of their own at a younger age. In short, the research shows that if a child is chronically stressed, their bodies learn to speed up the process of growth and reproduction, because chances are they are going to die earlier. So they have to reach maturity more quickly in order to ensure that their genes are replicated in the gene pool, but also so that they can live long enough to raise their offspring to its maturity.
That's interesting.
Here's the link with inequality. Chronic stress causes and contributes to a great deal of health problems, and all of these health problems are more frequent as you move down the social ladder. And there's a plethora of studies showing that the most powerful type of stress that we can feel in terms of how much cortisol it produces in our bodies is social evaluative threat. Social evaluative
That's right.
threat.
I knew this was getting around
Stress
to that
occurs
at some point.
when we experience threat to our self-esteem or social status. In this graph, you can see the results of a study that measured status anxiety using 35,000 people from 31 countries. Unsurprisingly, the poorer someone was, the more likely they were to experience anxiety due to low status. But it isn't just the poor. There's a gradient across the income spectrum. It might not seem immediately obvious because we tend to spectrum.
Okay, hold on. I'm just looking at the countries with high inequality, medium inequality, and low inequality. Let's see here. Okay, I'm trying to listen to him, but also absorb the information in these graphs, and sometimes I have to stop and catch up a bit. Okay.
It might not seem immediately obvious because we tend to take our surroundings as a given, but human beings are hyper-aware of their social status, real and perceived. This is because, as humans, we are primates. Primates are obligatory social animals. Social relationships are built into the core of our species. One of the most prominent adaptations as primates is a tendency towards dominance hierarchies. That is, the tendency to split ourselves into different ranks or classes that determine what resources we are entitled to. Even in small troops, there isn't simply a flat hierarchy with a big alpha lad at the top. There is an observable gradient of status. Beard enthusiast and baboon cynic Dr. Robert Sapolsky of Stanford University researches neuroendocrinology, which is the study of the interaction between hormones and the brain. He also blows poisonous darts at baboons. They are related somehow.
So what you spend just a bizarre amount of time doing is trying to figure out how to look nonchalant around a baboon.
Sapolsky has spent 25 years of his life studying a single troop of baboons in Africa and how their hormones are affected by social rank. In brief, Sapolsky shows that certain hormones like cortisol are crucial in determining both health and personality in primate social structures. It's possible to determine the rank of a primate in its social group by measuring the amount of cortisol that persists in its body at any given time. The lowest ranks have the most cortisol, and the highest ranks have the least. And it's a clear gradient again. Each step down the social ladder corresponds to more cortisol. The same pattern exists in humans. If you take a base cortisol level from a random human, you can use that to fairly accurately predict their social rank. And do you know what else?
So the stress is more about your social rank and not necessarily that you can't easily provide for yourself? Like you just inherently sort of know what your ranking is, and by knowing that, that's what affects you? Or am I just completely misreading what he's saying? I don't know.
He asks rhetorically. The lowest ranking primates in a group suffer from all the same health problems as the lowest ranking members of human society. In fact, Sapolsky says that he can identify the lowest and highest ranking members of a primate group.
So it's definitely not necessarily about your ability to provide for yourself. Or maybe it is, because maybe lower ranking ones, they don't get as much meat. I don't know. I have no clue. This is fascinating. Simon did mention to me that that's what this is about. And I'd kind of forgotten about that until I got back around, until I got to this point and he talked about stress, and then he talked about the social ranking. Then I was like, oh yeah, I remember.
Says that he can identify the lowest and highest ranking members of a primate group just by the way they look. The lowest ranking individuals tend to be overweight, especially in the midsection, or what is called waist to hip ratio, which is also considered a risk factor for disease in humans. Low-ranking primates exhibit signs of depression. They suffer from coronary diseases at higher rates. They even walk differently, slouching over, looking sad everywhere, with their big guts hanging out. The highest-ranking members, by contrast, are in excellent health, and also they basically act like absolute sausages to those who are ranked below them, who in turn take out their frustrations
on the ones
those
below
just below them.
See, that's kind of funny, because that reminds me, it's not funny, but I mean, it reminds me, there was this old Danny Kaye movie that I saw years ago. I've seen it multiple times. I think it was the very first Danny Kaye movie that I saw, and it was called The Inspector General. Maybe it was made like back in the 30s or the early 40s or something like that. But there's a scene in there that I never forgot. And it demonstrated something that had never really occurred to me before until I saw it. There was this guy, like some dude in the military, whatever. And he got chewed out by his superior. And so then when the superior left and the guy goes somewhere like out in the street or wherever, I can't remember specifically where they were, and he sees this dog and he kicks this dog because he's taking his anger out on the dog who's below him. And that was kind of like when it settled in my brain about how people taking their, and I wasn't a young child when I saw this, but I wasn't like well into my adulthood either. I was a teen or preteen or something. I think it was a teen, preteen, around there. And that's when it occurred to me that people who they get berated or abused or mistreated by someone above them, then they pass that same thing on to those below them, in their eyes. And it's kind of the same thing with, abusers. They do the exact same thing. In a lot of cases, they are abused, then they in turn abuse their offspring or people that are weaker than them or below them. It's kind of ingrained into us to do that.
Who in turn take out their frustrations on those just below them, who take out their frustrations on those below them. The stress of the group is passed down from top to bottom, along with worse health.
There's been individual guys over the years who I absolutely love, but they're these schemy, backstabbing, Machiavellian bastards. They're awful to each other.
Thank God for civilization.
Yeah, right. I know.
Civilization. We can see the social gradient of health in humans, just like other primates. In their 2009 book, The Spirit Level, Dr. Richard Wilkinson and Dr. 𝐂𝐇𝐀, epidemiologists from the UK, used information from third-party sources about income inequality, defined by the Gini coefficient, in various Western market democracies. They specifically looked at rich, democratic, capitalist countries. They then gathered data about 11 different indicators of health and well-being for those countries, and compared this to income inequality, using comprehensive statistical analyses. Remember, the income inequality they are looking at isn't between nations, it's within them. The statistical software they used, Magic Computer, found a trend line in each of the comparisons that, statistically, cannot be caused by chance. And here are some of the stats that they found. Mental illness is higher in unequal countries. Murder rates are higher. rate of imprisonment, teenage pregnancy, adult obesity. Infant mortality rates are higher. Countries with a greater income disparity also suffer from lower levels of trust, education, and child well-being. You can
These are
see
going
there's still
so
variation
fast.
here in the data because there
Drug
are, of
use.
course, other factors at play. For example, Singapore has a much lower murder rate than other countries with similar levels of inequality, but the overall pattern is distinct. I think what's especially interesting is that these things don't even depend on being from a highly stratified society, just being in a highly stratified society. Moving from one culture to another can and does affect health. Studies show that immigrants who come to the United States generally have a lower risk of heart disease than most Americans upon arrival.
No.
But that starts to go up over time, even if exercise and dietary habits remain the same. What changed for these immigrants? Their status in the culture they live in. The spirit level links more unequal societies with greater levels of stress. And
even if they came from countries where, maybe because they came from countries that didn't have those high levels of disparity between, the high level of inequality. Maybe if they came from a country where everybody was kind of, or most people were kind of like on the same level. Maybe that's why.
Spirit level links more unequal societies with greater levels of stress, and especially status anxiety. A chronic stressor, if ever there was one. And not just for those at the bottom of the income ladder. In more unequal societies, everyone across the income spectrum feels more stress and suffers more from health problems as a result.
Even the
I think it's
rich
interesting too
people.
that Japan and Sweden are both near the bottom of the income inequality index, but they are very different models of government. Sweden has large differences in income, but they also have higher taxes and more public services. Japan has smaller income differences before taxes and does less redistribution. It's not like either of those countries don't have very rich people living there or poor. It's just that the distance between the two extremes isn't quite as extreme as Toffington Alley or Backscratcher Hill. And narrowing the gap just a little bit can have broad public health benefits. So, in conclusion, greater inequality in society leads to greater chronic stress across that society, which is harmful to everyone, not just the poorest of the society in question,
like it trickles up,
but everyone in the society in question. So, what does this mean? Does our culture need to change? No, the factories will remain entirely functional with or without a smile on your face, and half of the products we sell now are status objects anyway, so whatever. Ta-ra.
Okay. Did he do this one too? Why do people believe in lizard people? Okay, so this is the first time I've ever seen this guy's video, like any of his videos, and he goes really in depth into the stuff that he's analyzing. I don't have the time or the patience or maybe even the ability to, maybe when I was in college I did. I mean, I look back at some of the papers I wrote in college and I was like, holy cow, I wrote that? I feel like now, number one, I have no interest in getting real studious about, because it doesn't hold my interest. The things that really interest me are what can kind of bring out maybe a more creative sort of whatever. But I like how he put this together in such a way that it was easy to follow. Some of the stuff that he was saying, I was like having to do some gear shifting and figure out, what he was really saying. And part of that is just because the day it's been and the hour of the day. But for the most part, I found this quite interesting. And as far as like I don't know what the solution would be. We could say, well, to have more equality and to have more whatever, but that's not something that's so easy to that's not something that can be easily changed in the middle of whatever's happening. Maybe it would be like incremental things. But I like how he was pointing out that it's not necessarily like Japan. So for some people, their solution would be, we need to have government step in and do this and this and this and this and this. And in my opinion, that's like the worst thing, because in my opinion, that makes things, that just muddies everything and just makes it even worse. And then it gives government too much power. And so I am always inherently against that sort of approach. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know what it would take. I mean, I guess if we examine Japan's, they're doing something that's good for the health of their people. I don't think it's, you know what, I don't even think it's anything that they're intentionally doing because they want people to be, this is just part of their culture. Whatever it is they're doing, whatever it is their foundation is on, it's something that is feeding into this, and it's making them what they are. So I'm just curious. It's not just about the way they eat, because like he was saying, even if people are doing what they should do, making good dietary choices and exercising, they can still be susceptible to these issues. At the same time, if you are not abusing your body, and if you are eating right, and if you are exercising and, stuff like that, your chances are quite a bit better than they would be if you didn't. So I think no matter what your situation in life, it's probably always a good idea to try to take care of your health, your physical body, your mental health. I know for a lot of people that's easier said than done, depending on their circumstances. But I don't know. We only have this one body, this one life, and a lot of times the choices that we make in our life do directly affect our health. Not all the time, but a lot of times. On the other hand, there are these other factors at play that are interesting, and I guess people never even really think about it too much. So I'm curious to watch some of his other stuff now. I think I'm going to bookmark this one here about lizard people, because I'm really curious to see what he has to say about that. So, all right. Well, this was interesting. I don't feel like I've got much to like contribute other than just sharing the stuff that pops into my head as I'm watching what he says. I feel like I would need to delve into a lot of this to understand it a little bit better, and to examine the differences between places like Japan and Sweden and the US, and what's at play in the cultures. Like, I know here in the US, we have a lot of issues when it comes to things like the way people, their mental health, the way they are treated or not treated. It feels like in the US, we are so heavily medicated. And I wonder if sometimes, or I wonder how much of a factor that is. The way that we have a lot of doctors here that are just more inclined to throw pills at somebody as opposed to try other methods, to deal with things. And then we also have issues such as a lot of fatherless homes and a lot of abuse in different homes. And so when you have generations that are being brought up like that, it's
very, very, yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's not something that is absent in even in a place like Japan, but it's present because that's just the nature of humanity. But it does feel like we've got more of an issue like that going on here. And I think there's so many different factors involved in that. And I have no idea what the solution would be to fix all of this, or even if it can really be fixed.
I think it'll be a while before it's
okay. Well, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm being interrupted And I don't have anything else to add. And I do have some trailers that I would like to check out, some exciting looking trailers. So I'm going to wrap this up. And thank you again, Simon, for the recommendation, even if maybe a lot of it kind of went right on over my head. I don't know, but it was still interesting. He did present it in a very easy to understand way. And I'm going to check out some of his other stuff. So, all right. Bye.